from the degree to which they offer rights to their own citizens and invite a democratic commitment throughout. So we have a huge menu of things to discuss. We have time for a number of questions, and could I ask people to seek the floor, and I will invite a microphone to come your way. Why don't we begin with Africa Confidential here, right out in the open? If you could ask the first question.
I like the idea of the open.
Thanks for making me less confidential. It's Patrick Smith. I'm really intrigued to hear what you had to say about the African Union. As you point out, the African Union was pretty much sidelined in the big international interventions last year in La Côte d'Ivoire and Libya. I wondered if you could tell us what you would have done differently if you'd been president. What would you have pressed the African Union to do to make itself more central to these interventions, which were, in name at least, to support the democratic currents? And what would you do now, as you say, to the worrying threat in Senegal and perhaps in Zimbabwe of electoral violence coming up this year?
The question of what I would have done if I'd been there, it's a hypothetical matter, and it's a little bit, the horse is already out of. But I believe what I'm trying to say is this: is that if there is a common set of values that all of us subscribe to within the Union, when issues come up like they did in Côte d'Ivoire and in Libya, it will be relatively easy for us to speak with one voice. The difficulty, for instance, in the Libyan matter was that there were so many people who had to make decisions who were beholden to the person who was responsible for the Libyan crisis in the first place, Muammar Gaddafi, and therefore found it extremely difficult to advocate for any robust response to the crisis. I don't think that situation would occur if the Union was very clear in its mind about the values that underlay it. And it's that absence. I mean, the AU Charter talks a great deal about the need for good governance, for democracy, etc. But nevertheless, accommodated countries that were clearly not democratic countries, where good governance was not being implemented. So the first thing is that this set of values that around which we forge the Union, if we're clear about it, when something like what happened in Libya is concerned, we may not have the physical power to be able to impact, like say, NATO did in resolve, but at least we will be in a position to speak so forcefully and clearly that it will be difficult for the world to deal with the issue without taking our views into account. The same happened in La Côte d'Ivoire. All of us who are neighbors of La Côte d'Ivoire were aware from the beginning that Laurent Gbagbo, I was of the view that he could never win an election in Côte d'Ivoire. The arithmetic on the ground was never on his side. But once again, as a result of these internal interest conflicts within ECOWAS, for instance, as the beginning, ECOWAS was not able to state with clarity and forcefully, this is what has happened. We accept that Alassane Ouattara won the election. And all of us are saying, without equivocation, Laurent Gbagbo, hand over peacefully. I think if he had been met with that sort of united position within ECOWAS and then within the African Union, because even within the African Union, there were countries like Angola that were through the back door and others attempting to feed him the wherewithal to continue his defiance. Those are the matters that we can clear. Building our military capacity, those things are going to take time. Our economies have to prosper and give us the opportunity to do that. But at the diplomatic and political level, if we are clear about the values that bind all of us, it will be much easier for us to impact those situations. And I'm saying the same. I have yet to hear anybody condemning openly what clearly is going on in Senegal, which is a man who came to power as a Democrat and now transformed himself into a leader who's going to stay there forever. And yet, we're finding it difficult to say what is the obvious position. Therefore, when the violence occurs, which I'm hoping all of us are praying to God will not happen in Senegal, Senegal's credentials as a democratic state has been an inspiration to hundreds of millions across the continent. Hopefully, it will not occur. But if it does, I believe once again it is time for our leaders to stand up and speak and say, these kind of developments are not just on.
Thank you very much. Yes, you, sir, if you could stand up and give us your name and affiliation if relevant. Thank you.
My name is Nanaya Onyantechi. I'm a student. Too often what is said about the international community's response to chaotic situations around the world is too little, too late. And in Ghana at the moment, there's every incentive for the ruling government to distort and alter the outcomes of the next election. And one of the incentives is that within 3 years, 667 million Ghana cedis have been paid fraudulently to some people. And I think in order to avoid the potential investigation by an incoming MPP government, there's that incentive for them to alter and distort the outcome of the elections. Now, what do you think the international community can and should do to stop this from happening? For instance, in the case of the payment of the judgment debt, do you think the international community should withhold any further funding to Ghana as a form of pressure to bear on the current administration?
There are two more hypothetical questions already, so why don't you take those two?
Charity, they say, begins at home. And the issues you're talking about are matters that, first of all, the Ghanaian people have to pronounce themselves on. We have to come to grips with our electoral system and with governments that will attempt to manipulate or distort them. We have to make it clear that we will not go down that road, and that a government that attempts it will not meet with our approval. I mean, before the international community can come in on any issue, we ourselves must try to deal with our own matters. The payments of the monies that you're talking about, these are strictly domestic issues in Ghana. And I believe the institutions of our country are quite capable, if they want to deal with this issue. And that is the first place we have to look at, the institutions of our country.
So, yes, you, sir, in the third row, and I'll come to the second row next.
My name is Alulu. I'm a student. During your speech, you made mention of China predominance in Africa, and what maybe we could do is leverage our resources and, in effect, for them to develop our infrastructure and industrialization. I was thinking if it's the best approach for we to leverage our natural resources and for we to leverage our natural resources for them to give us those things back. Why can't we Africans build on our own industrialization? Like kind of copy, you made mention of like African Union and European Union. Do what like African Union, European Union do. We can develop our own industrialization. Export, that will give us more income rather than leveraging our natural resources to China.
Okay, we got it.
My response is really, I mean, I don't know any country in the world, including the United States of America, that has been able to finance 100% its own industrial development. Everybody has depended to some extent, at some stage, China itself, on mobilizing foreign savings to support your economic growth and development. And I'm saying that I don't think that we in Africa are going to be any different. Foreign investment is going to continue to come to our continent. But what we need to do is to try and put a perspective on the kind of foreign investment that we believe is useful for us. I, for instance, I don't see the value of Ghana switching destinations in the export of its raw cocoa. We have been traditionally selling them in the markets of the West. Now going to sell them to China or India doesn't really change the nature of our economy. And that is the change that we have to be seeking. So it is that trade-off that I think that we have to look at. If somebody is coming to say, yes, I have money,